What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Broadened Horizin. I am your host, Drake Riggs, bringing you episode 5. We've officially had 20 guests, you guys. How about that? Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. For episode 5, we kick things off in a big way with the winner of Rizin 25's co-main event, Hiromasa Ougikubo. After Hiromasa, we go to the Rebels kickboxing queen herself, Rina Panchan Okamoto. Next, it will be the young featherweight knockout artist Kyohei Hagiwara, who scored a 22-second knockout at Rizin 25 and is turning right around to fight at Rizin 26. And last but not least, former Rizin and Bellator bantamweight champion Kyoji Horiguchi joined us before his massive rematch on New Year's Eve at Rizin 26 against Kai Asakura. Thank you to all of them for joining us. It was another awesome lineup, and thank you to those who submitted questions, which we will always answer at the end of the show. And remember that wherever you're watching or listening, all versions of Broadened Horizin can be found on mymmanews.com. Those versions being video, audio, and Japanese audio. So with that in mind, enough intro. Thank you as always, everybody. Enjoy. And first up, it is the veteran bantamweight contender, Hiromasa Ougikubo. All right. Hey, Hiromasa. Thanks so much for joining me, man. Big congratulations, of course, on the great win at Rizin 25. Good to see you back in action. And, before we get talking about the fight and everything, I'm very curious. I'm dying to know the explanation to this. Your last name, Ougikubo, but I've seen it without the U after the O and with the U. So what's the correct spelling of your last name? I'm very curious.
Ougi ですね。
So yeah, it's the one with the Ougi is the correct spelling.
Okay, yeah, I was always really confused about that because a lot of people I've noticed leave out the U, and I think even back in the Ultimate Fighter they left it off for you. I don't know if there any reason for that. It was a weird thing.
何ですかね。
So I don't really know how it happened,
パスポートかな。
but I'm assuming that back in the day when I was fighting for Shuto, I think somebody just posted my name on Sherdog without the U, and that's what just kind of went through. And I've always, because my passport it has a U, right? OU. So, but I've always just kind of let it go, just whatever it is. But recently, I started to put things together of my life together, and then I thought that I need to get my name right. So I recently requested Sherdog and those pages to make my name with the OU.
Yeah, definitely got to be accurate with that stuff. I was always so confused, like which one is it? So good to know the actual answer now. I got to get that U in there, and seeing that more. So good to know there. But of course, great win against Kenta in your last fight here. Just this most recent Friday. So man, what's the initial reaction here to getting the win, rebounding, getting back in the win column, and just your overall feelings of the performance you had?
今の気持ちは
Yeah, so my loss in August against Asakura, it was actually very devastating. And it wasn't the way I wanted to perform. I lost in a way where I didn't want it to be. Like, there was a lot of doubt in myself that built up after that loss. And it really hit me hard mentally. And I was almost at a point where I thought that I could never rebound as a fighter again. So there was a lot of doubt in myself, and I kind of did hit rock bottom. But after all that, my most recent fight, I was able to get the win. Although it was a decision, but I was able to get that win, and I kind of regained confidence again. So in one word, I'm just very relieved.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, the Kai loss, like you mentioned, only your second career loss by knockout. And I mean, for the title too, and everything that went into it, and rebounding now against Kenta, did that really, it sounds like, it made the fight with Kenta here a lot bigger for you because of what happened in the last one and everything. So, I mean, did you feel a lot of pressure going into it because of, what happened in the fight with Kai?
プレッシャーはかなり感じましたね。今まで以上というか。
So yeah, I think I fought 28 professional fights in my career so far. But this fight, leading up to this fight, it was by far I felt the most pressure. Leading into this fight. And at a point where if I lose, I don't deserve to be here anymore. So for me, if I lost this fight, it was all over.
Well, you went out there and you performed performed very well, obviously. Ended up getting the win, and a great third round in particular. Seemed like you got, stronger as the fight went on. Was he kind of tricky to figure out at first? Because, he's got a very unusual stance, at least compared to most fighters, I would say. The way he keeps his hands down and everything. Did you feel like that was the case where as the fight went on, you were able to figure him out more? And then, of course, heard him in the third round, got on top of him and really just controlled the rest of it from there.
はい、そうですね。
It wasn't that he was tricky and hard to figure out, but I was being very conservative in the first round because I knew that he was looking to counter my shots with a knee. So I was making sure that I don't run into that knee. So I was being very conservative, and I used the first round to kind of figure him out, study him. And as the round went on, I found out that my jabs and head kicks were landing. So in the second round, I utilized my jabs and head kicks, which got Takizawa to kind of guard up a little bit. He started to utilize his guard more. So that's when I started bringing in some shots and takedowns to mix things up. And well, I definitely felt that as the fight proceeded, it got easier to fight him.
Yeah, I mean, that's how it played out. That's for sure. And, did you do much study on him before? Like, I don't know if you're a guy who does a whole lot of studying on their opponents, like, or you just let your coaches handle it. But, like, did you know much about Kenta going into the fight? And, did anything really surprise you, or were you pretty well aware of what he had to offer? So I usually don't really, like, study my opponents. But I do see some footage, and what I try to focus on during those times is that what my opponent eats, like where his lack of defenses are. So that's what I try to figure out for all my opponents. And for this one, I kind of felt that Takizawa had a weak left guard. So everything on his left side were landing, or actually on my left side were landing. So that's where I tried to capitalize on, and it worked out. That it did. Got the hand raised. So, I mean, with all that in mind, are you thinking about what could be next already? You're just going to enjoy the end of the year festivities that are coming up here, or, do you have anything in mind for maybe who you want to fight next, when next, or are you just chilling out right now? What are you thinking for the future?
年末はゆっくり楽しもうと思ってます。
So right now, I'm not quite sure about New Year's Eve. As of now, the plan is to just chill out and relax the rest of the year. But you never know, right? But right now, I'm in the middle of moving, as you can see. And that is my biggest thing I have to worry about right now, is moving.
Yeah, definitely. Moving is always a fun little project of sorts. And so, best of luck with the full process there. Are you moving far? How far are you moving from where you were before?
いや、近くですね。今住んでる町の中で引っ越します。少し大きい、今より大きい家に引っ越そうと思って引っ越しますね。はい。
I'm going to be moving within the same city, but not too far, but it's going to be a little bigger than where I am right now.
Well, there you go. That sounds nice. So, very cool. Very cool. And, man, I know that depending on where your mindset was and everything, listening to what you're saying about the Kai loss, and it seems like, if things didn't go your way, of course they did against Kenta here. I mean, could this have been like retirement for you? Are you thinking kind of the end of, MMA for you? Is that something playing in your mind? Of course, you've had a very long, successful career now, but do you see and envision life after MMA at this point?
少し考えてますね。年齢もそこまで若くないので、はい、考えてます。はい。
So the thought of after being a professional fighter is always there. I'm not that young anymore. My age is getting there. So I think I'm right at a point where I have started to think about that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we can't all stay young forever, unfortunately, but still you're young in total years, 33? So I mean, fight years, maybe a little older, but that's not too bad, I would say. But Yeah, happens eventually. So understandable there. And I mean, as for the past, though, and things that have happened in your career, I did want to mention and talk about a little bit the Ishii Watari fight at the end of the year last year, Ryzen 20, because that fight was so awesome, a late fight of the year contender. And, you've had a lot of great, crazy fights. But I mean, just where does that one rank in terms of your craziest fights that you've had? Because that one was awesome. Just have to ask.
自分の中で
It would definitely make my top 3 list, but it's not my best. It's not number 1.
ベスト3には入ると思います。でも1位ではないです。
Oh, well, in that case, then, what's number 1? I gotta know.
1位はタフのパントージャ戦ですかね。自分の中で。
It's for me, it's the fight against Pantoja during the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah, that was a very good one too. And I mean, just mentioning the Ultimate Fighter, I was talking about it the other day. Or it might have been during the intermission stream actually that I did. But I mean, the Ultimate Fighter, of course, is going back in time a little bit, and what has happened. But when the season ended, of course, you fought Tim Elliott in the finals of it, right, to get that title shot. Were you surprised that they, didn't bring you still into the UFC anyway? Because usually they will still bring in at least both, a couple people, not just the winner these days. So, and especially at the time for the flyweight division where they kind of needed a bunch of people. Was that surprising to you that they didn't offer you anything past the Ultimate Fighter at the time?
疑問に思ってましたね。
Yeah, I definitely thought it was weird. Because even after the season ended, I didn't get the call, but some of the fighters who lost during the season were getting contracts from the UFC, like Eric and Pantoja. Both fighters got an offer from the UFC, and I was sitting there like, why am I not getting the call? So it was definitely frustrating for me.
Yeah, definitely a bizarre move on their part, and I think probably not the best one considering, you haven't really lost too much since then, have had very good success. And I mean, that was at flyweight too. So just in terms of that, you prefer not to cut weight too? So ultimately, instead of, now you're a bantamweight rather than flyweight. So it's worked out pretty good. Is that fair to say?
思いますね。すごいそれは感じます。
So in hindsight, I think it was good for me that I didn't get the offer from the UFC. Because when you think about it, I'm sure I would have been able to make some kind of an impression in the UFC. But when you look at it, like Japanese fighters barely get 2 fights a year, maybe 1. And for me, now that I'm thinking about it, like it would be really financially tough for me to live off of 1 fight per year. So right now, I have been fighting constantly in Ryzen. And I have become much more stable, and I think it's a very good thing for me. So I do think it ended up well that I didn't get the offer from the.
Yeah, and I mean that's not even factoring in potential travel expenses of having to go overseas all the time and everything too. So yeah, I hear you there. But yeah, just 2 more things left for you, Hiro. Thanks so much for the time, man. But I'm curious. I got to know, as New Year's Eve is coming up, we mentioned New Year's Eve earlier. And then Kai, of course, the rematch with Horiguchi and Asakura, both 2 guys you're familiar with, So just in terms of predictions and how you see the fight going, I got to know what your opinion is, your take on the big rematch for the title in your division.
希望というか
So personally, I hope that Horiguchi wins.
勝ってほしいのは堀口選手なんですけど、
But
多分
speaking realistically, I think Asakura's going to win.
We'll see what happens. Can't wait to find out. That one's going to be awesome. So, yeah, definitely. We'll all be staying tuned for that. But, all right, Hiromasa, I got one last thing for you. Fun question. I try to make the last ones fun for everybody. I know that you know how to play guitar. At least I've seen you can play guitar on your Instagram and stuff. So do you have a favorite song to play or multiple songs? Is there something that sticks out for, when you're getting on the guitar?
I'm sure that no English speaker who will understand this, but I'm a big fan of Takuro Yoshida. He's a Japanese singer. And in fact, I use one of his songs for my walkout music. It's called Rakuyo, but I like to play a lot of his songs. And internationally, I like Bob Dylan's music, so I like to play his song too.
All right, very cool. I mean, Bob Dylan, good choice there. And, I don't know the Japanese one, but that's why we have a Japanese version of the show. People will be excited to hear that, I'm sure. So, yeah, Hiro, that is all I got for you, man. Awesome chatting with you. Awesome win, of course. Congratulations again. And just, big thanks for coming on to chat here. And, arigato gozaimashita. Thanks for taking the time, sir. And, good luck with the rest of the moving, and a happy new year to you as it's coming up.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
From there, we go to the undefeated kickboxing sensation, Rina Panchan Okamoto. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining me, Rina. Great to get to talk to you. Very excited to, hear your story and everything. And, congratulations, of course, on the big title defense recently. Awesome to see that. So, first of all, I'm very curious. Rina Panchan, the nickname, the origin story. I got to know, because I know Panchan, Pan, character from Dragon Ball, right? Is that the origin of the nickname? What's the story behind Panchan?
パンちゃん。はい。小1ぐらいからずっと家でドラゴンボールを見てて、
as a
ドラゴンボールが好きで、
as a child,
で
I
19歳と
big
誕
Dragon
生日の直前にちょうどドラゴンボールを見てた時
and
に、
I definitely liked the character
パンちゃんに似てるって友達に言
Panchan.
われて、でちょうど
And
20歳の誕生日を
before
迎
my
えた年
20th birthday,
名前変えようかな
I was
って思
having
っ
a
て、
chat with my
パンちゃん
friend,
って
and
いう
she
名前
mentioned
に
that
そ
you
う
look like
なんで
Panchan.
格闘技始める前に
So
名前をパンちゃんに変えてたって感じ。
as I was having my 20th birthday, I decided to rename myself and call myself Panchan. So I actually had that name before I started fighting.
Yeah, it works. It fits very well, and a good character there. Of course, I watched a little bit of Dragon Ball 2 growing up, so fantastic show, of course. But yeah, I was curious about that. And so, just for your story in general, I'm very fascinated by it from what I already know and everything. And I want to hear it from your side, of course. But, your early life sounded like you did a lot of swimming, track and field type athletics and whatnot. And, I know that you dropped out of high school, I believe, and, kind of got involved in the nightclub scene a little bit maybe. But I'm just curious to know, how did you find combat sports? What exactly is the story that led you to where we are now? If you could tell me.
16ぐらいまでその毎日
Up
運
until
動っていう状況を
16
してたんで
years
すけど、
old, I
そ
was
こからぱ
I
った
was
り
an
運
athlete.
動を
I
や
was
めて
doing
しまっ
sports
て、
all my life and being competitive.
でもう毎日
But
が運動をやめてからがす
after
ご
I
く
kind of
退
stopped
屈と
working
いう
out
か、何やっても
and
なんか満たされ
playing
ないみたい
sports
な
at
時期が送っ
16,
てて、その中で
I
また
couldn't
19歳、
satisfy
20
myself.
ぐらいに
Anything I
自分
do
でスポ
wouldn't
ーツとかを
satisfy
いろい
me,
ろ
and it
やり
was
だして、
kind of
やっぱ
boring.
スポー
Life
ツやる
became
ことで
boring and
生き生きするし、
stale.
自分にはそれしかないんだなと
So
思って、
I
楽
started
天教室とアクションっていう教室に
at 1920. I started to get myself back into
入ったのがきっ
playing
かけで、そ
sports,
こでキック
and
ボクシングに
I
行っ
knew
て、
that
22歳
sports.
の終わり
I
で
need
今のジム
sports
に入ってみま
in
し
my
た。
life.
キックボ
I
ク
need
シ
to
ング
be
やっ
involved
てみよう
in
かなと
sports.
思って。
So when I came out to Tokyo at the age of 21, I got myself into like athletic programs. And that's when I was introduced to kickboxing. And at the age of 22, I joined this current gym I'm at right now. And I decided to challenge the sport.
All right, very cool. What was the initial, the meeting of a sport like kickboxing? A very physical sport, obviously, and working with the struggle gym, of course. Just what was it like when you initially met? Was it love at first sight for the sport, or did it take some time to kind of adjust?
いや、もうすぐにこれだって思っちゃいましたね。なんか、
So for me, it was a great
日々
experience.
褒められることがないので、なかっ
Up
たので、
until that point,
キック
I
に
was
出会って、
I would never
初
be
めてなのに
praised
す
for
ごいね
anything.
ってめちゃ
People
めちゃ
wouldn't give me
いろんな
compliments
人
of
に言われ
anything.
て、それが
So
嬉
when
し
I
かったの
first
で、
started,
ちょっ
people
と
would
これで
praise
やって
me
みよう
and
かなって
compliment me
単純
for
に
my
思っちゃいまし
abilities. They'd be like,
た。はい、周りの声
"Oh, you're
に
so good for your first time," and people would make me feel good about it. So me being as a simple person I am, felt good on my first time. So that's how I started, and I stuck with it.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be a good feeling, of course. And what were people's reactions like, outside of the fight scene when they hear like, "Oh, what, you're fighting now?" Like, really? Like, were they surprised when they found out?
最初はやっぱり全員、もう10人
So
いらっしゃ
at
る
the
100
time,
人いた100人が、
10 out of
そん
10
な簡単
people
なもんじゃないよって言
would
われ
say
てし
that
まう、
it's
そう
not that
いう
easy,
言われるのも当たり
and
前
they
だと思う
wouldn't
の
take
で、
me serious.
本気だと
And
思わ
that
れてな
includes
か
my
ったと思う
family.
ので、
So at the very beginning, I
誰
didn't
一
get
人
any support.
まあ、
I'm sure that, over time you've kind of won your family over, of course. Maybe, nobody wants to see, their children, get hurt or anything like that. But have they come around a little bit, over time?
すごい変わってます。もう全員が今
Yeah,
応
the
援し
opinions of
て
my
くれ
family
てま
has
して、
changed drastically.
試合の応援と
I
かも来
have
てく
they
れたりし
fully
ます
support me
し、
now, They come to my fights. They cheer for me. Up until my third professional fight, they were mostly like, just make sure you don't hurt yourself. You don't get punched in the face. That kind of support. But after a few fights, they fully cheer for me to go for the win. They want me to accomplish things, and they back me 100%.
That's awesome. Definitely a big change over time, just getting more comfortable. And especially as you keep winning, makes sense that they would react that way. So that's very cool to hear and everything. And I know that you've also, I don't know if you're still doing it, but have done modeling before. And if that ever coexisted with like fighting and, just the difficulties of maybe doing both of those things, because obviously you need to not have black eyes or whatever if you're taking pictures and whatnot. But how has it been juggling those two things between modeling and fighting? Because I know there's some people who have also done that in the past.
キックやる前にちょっと大阪で
So I used to model before
遊びでや
kickboxing
ってたというか
back in
本気ではやって
Osaka.
ないんですけど
Um,
やってた感
but
じ
I
で
wasn't
で
I
も
wasn't really taking
キ
it
ックやっ
seriously.
てから一切やってないです
But
キックの方
now
が全
when
然
I have to, when I do,
あ仕事でモデルってことですか
they understand that I'm
あ
also a
今
fighter
今の
and I
初め
might
て
show up
あ
with some bruises on my face or
あ
whatnot.
なるほど
But the makeup artist does a fantastic job. And
結構
yeah, a lot of the
私
times
綺麗にカッて
it
ない
turns
の
out
で結構まあ目腫れたりとか
so
するんですけど
they understand my situation
綺麗に
and the makeup
隠して
person
くれ
does
て
a
るの
great
で
job,
大
so
丈夫
I'm
です
not having
鼻
any
とか
issues as of now.
結構鼻とか折れても全然大丈夫でしたね
Of course, that's what they're there for. So they got to do their jobs as well. And just for how many fights that you've had so far, internet can be a little bit unreliable. So sometimes. So, what is it? 6-0 in kickboxing and 3-0 in Muay Thai. I mean, just got to get the specification here on your career so far.
9戦9勝ムエタイが3なんですか
If you look at the official record in Japan would be nine fights. I'd be 9-0. Because all the fights have no they have no they have no elbows. They're not like official Muay Thai rules. So he is 9-0 under Japanese official kickboxing rules.
Okay, all right. Just had to see, if there was a preference there between Muay Thai or kickboxing or whatnot. Just get the full story there. So, okay, very interesting. And, I also wanted to ask you if you had like a favorite technique or something, because I've noticed from, watching your fights and everything that your front kick is really something you like to use a lot, and it's very good. So would you say that's your favorite technique if you have one?
そうです前蹴りは結構使っちゃい
Front kicks are definitely
相手
they're
が
useful.
やっぱり身長が低い
Because of my height,
私とやる
whenever I
時に
fight, my
大体
opponents are usually a lot
結構
shorter
な
than
ので
me.
パンチャーの選
And
手が
my
多かったので蹴り
in
の
my
選手
previous fights,
パンチで来る選手にやっぱ
they are
前
all
蹴り
punchers
合わせ
instead
や
of
すい
kickers.
ので
So when you go against a fighter who's shorter and who's a
結構前
puncher,
蹴りは使ってます
that
ね
front
割と
kick
結構みんな
definitely
ペース
comes in
パンチ
handy
で
and you
来る
can
んです
utilize
け
it
ど
very
前蹴り
well.
って結構
So
それで
a
も
lot of
や
the
られやすい
times
の
my
で
opponents have
自
studied
分
me
が
and
バランスが
try
取れ
to
るのか
work
なと思うので一
on
番
their
は
game
前蹴
plan,
りが
but
頑張ってますは
that
い
front kick definitely throws them off of their game plan. And plus, I just don't want them to shoot in and in a close range fight. So yes, I do like to utilize my front kick a lot.
Yeah, it definitely comes in handy in those situations. So you throw it very well. So I just had to bring that up specifically. And, of course, as I mentioned earlier, congratulations on the win over Mari earlier this month. So, I mean, just looking back on the win, were you happy with the performance? Did it go as you expected it to, that fight?
前回の試合ってことですよねマリ選手と
So my opponent, that fight
防衛戦
wasn't
ではなかったんですけど
necessarily a title defense,
まあ
but Mari was a
キャリアが
very
35戦ぐらいあ
experienced
る選手
veteran.
だっ
She
たの
has
で
over 35
まあ
professional
前々
fights
回
under
の
her
美咲
belt.
選手との試合の
And
時にまあ
the
キャ
fight
リア
before
は
that,
関係ないっていうことを証明できた
I
の
was
で
able
ま
to prove that
本
experience
当
doesn't
に
matter.
そういうのを関係な
So
くやっぱり
I wanted to
圧
make
倒して
a
勝ちたい
bold
なっていう気持
statement
ちがあった
for
んで
this
すけ
fight
ど
going against
やっぱり
a
ねダウンが
very
取れないっていう
experienced
のが課
opponent.
題なので
Um,
そこについて
I
は
was
全
able
然
to
満
get the
足してな
win,
いです
but
ただいつもより
I
テク
wasn't
ニックが
able
落ち
to
着い
knock
て
her
戦
down,
えたっていうこと
and
が
I
全
wasn't
然
able to finish the
8戦
fight.
目と比べて
So
9
for
戦目の方
me,
が全然良かったので
um,
そこは満足してるんですけ
those
ど
are the things I have to
あと
work
もう一
on,
つですね
and
もう
those
一個
are the things
上
that I
に
have
行かなきゃっ
to
ていう感じの試合でしたはい
overcome in order to take my fight game to the next level.
Yeah, always things that can be improved, but ultimately got the win. So, I mean, that's a big deal. That's what matters, right? And I mean, okay, maybe it wasn't a title defense, but correct me if I'm wrong. It was your first time main eventing for a Rebels event, right? So that's kind of a big deal. I mean, just what was the feeling like of getting to do that? Being the headliner.
それに対してはそこまでプレッシャーは
So,
感じてなくて、
me
も
being the
とも
main
とデビュ
event,
ー
the
戦
last fight
が
of the
メ
event,
インではないん
it
ですけ
didn't it
ど、も
didn't
とも
really
と
put
一
too
番
much
最
pressure
後
on me. I
の
didn't really
ほ
feel
ぼメ
much.
インみたいな感
Um,
じで、デビュー
my
戦の時
professional
も
debut fight,
最後トリをしてくれ
it
るの
wasn't
で、
necessarily the
そんな
main event,
に
but
は
I
なかっ
was
た
the
んですけ
last one to
ど、まあ
fight on
一
that
番最
card.
後なので、まあ
So
ダウン
it
を
doesn't
取らなきゃな
really
ってい
mean
う
too
方が
much.
ありま
But
すね。
I
プレッ
did,
シャーという
heading
より
into
は、
that fight, I
どうしても
did
ダウン
feel
取らなき
like
ゃっていう
I
方があり
needed
ま
to
した。
close the event in a very nice way. Obviously with a knockdown or with, trying to finish the fight. So I went in there with that mentality, but yeah, I wasn't able to do that. So just
Yeah, I mean, you'll get them next time, right? So it's got to keep working and improving. But of course, like I said, got the win, everything. It's still a cool moment to be able to have that headlining spot, right? And unfortunately, as we can see, you got your hand wrap on. I know you injured your hand in the fight. So just curious, what's the update there and the severity, of your hand injury? How's it doing?
はい。1ヶ月半ぐらい固定な
I
のかな
think
と
I
思った
need
ら、
my
固定
cast
ギ
on
ブ
for
ス
2
自体
weeks.
は2週間で大丈夫って
Um,
言われ
but
て、それからちょっ
I'm
と
not allowed
今
to
ク
close
ッ
my
パをしちゃダ
fist
メなので、クッ
at
パ
all.
を来週から
Basically what
リ
happened
ハビ
is
リを始
that
めて、
the ligament that
まあ、ちゃん
supports
と
the
打てるように
joint
なるのは2ヶ月かかるって言われ
muscle
ました。
tore
でもまあ1
completely.
ヶ月ぐらいから柔らかいスポンジ
So
とかで打つ
I had
練
to
習を
go
始め
under
て、
surgery,
し
and
っ
I
かり
had
打
to
てるよう
stitch
になる
that
のが2ヶ
that
月
ligament,
かなっ
particular
ていう感じ
ligament
なの
back
で、
up. So that's my injury. I have this cast on for 2 weeks, but I can't close my fist. So overall, I'm told that it's going to take 2 months for me to start training, like hitting pads
なんか2ラウンド目、
seriously.
試合の2ラウンド目
The
の
plan
時に
is
痛っ
to
てなった
start
んです
hitting
けど、その時
pads
になんか痛く
in
て
about
怪
a
我した
month
みたい
with
で、
a soft glove
で
and
その脱
soft
臼し
soft
て
pad.
靭帯が
But
損
for me to
傷
go
しちゃったみた
100%,
いで、
it's probably going to take
う
me
ん
two months. And I do believe that it happened in the
そ
second
うです。
round.
はい、
I
そんな状況です。
dislocated my finger and continued to fight with that dislocated finger led to the tear.
Wow, I mean, yeah, that doesn't sound very fun at all. That sucks. But I mean, would you say that's been the worst injury you've had so far? Because I mean, geez, the whole thing to the joint that sounds brutal.
そうですね。他にも骨折したこととか
So
もあ
I've
るんで
had
す
some
けど、で
broken
も
bones in the
やっぱ
past,
り右
but
手がね、使えない
injuring
っ
my
ていうの
right
は
fist
結構
is
何もで
pretty
きないかなって思
it's
うの
pretty
で、マスと
significant
かスパーリ
because
ン
you
グがで
can't
きないの
punch, you
で、
can't really train
ま
yourself
あ
that
筋
allows
ト
any
レ、
kind
フィジカ
of
ル、
motions with your
体
upper
幹、そうい
body
う部分を
or
鍛え
with
て
your
いきなが
hands.
ら今、
So right
少し蹴
now,
り技
all
も
I can do is
新し
just
い
a
テ
lot
ク
of
ニックと
physical
かそういう
training
のを磨いていこうかなって思ってます。
and
まあ
core
試合は
strength
ね、早く
and
したいと思って
conditioning.
るので、
Um,
3ヶ
and
月
I
後にはリハビリし
try,
たいって思って
I'm
ます。
trying to learn
は
some
い。
more techniques using my feet, but that's all I can do for now. But really, I do want to fight as soon as possible. So my goal is to get back in the ring in about 3 months.
Of course. I mean, as soon as you can when you're all healed up and everything, that would be great. And I mean, I know that you've kind of spoken a little bit about Ryzen before in the past and everything. And you've hung out with some Ryzen fighters. I know Kana Watanabe, you did the photo shoot with Kai Asakura, which was very cool to see. So, I mean, I'm just curious, was your hope kind of to win this fight and then maybe get a fight on the big Ryzen New Year's Eve show? Was that something in your head?
いい試合をしてきっちりダウンを取ってアピールしたいと
So in
思
a
ったんですけ
perfect
ど、
world,
まあ
I
自分的
wanted to
に
perform
まだもう
a
一つダメ
good
か
in
な
a
と思っ
good
た
way
の
in my
で、来年
last
でも
fight. So
自分の中
obviously,
では焦ってないので、来年出さ
I
せて
wanted
も
to
らえるように
perform
頑
in a
張ろ
more
うって感じ
convincing
でした
way
ね。は
and
い。
ask for a spot, but I couldn't do that during the fight. So I do feel that it could wait. I'll work on my skills again, and hopefully I can put on a more convincing fight and wait for my chance for next year.
I mean, just to talk about the last fight some more and, with the injury and everything happening in the middle of the fight, right? The second round and still going on to win. I mean, does that kind of make it a little bit better and, maybe, give you that feeling of not, shouldn't be so hard on yourself because you did fight, with essentially one hand, right? And then, I mean, it makes it more impressive that you were able to get through and still win with that injury, right? Do you look at it that way at all?
私でもアドレナリンがすごい出るので、
So I'm the
あ
kind
の
of
打っ
fighter
て当
who
たった瞬間に
gets
い
into
た、
fight mode.
あ、
I
やべっ
really
て
don't
思ったん
feel
ですけ
things.
ど、その後
So
は
I
気に
do
せず
remember,
ちゃ
I
んと
do
打
know
ってました。
when I
な
injured
の
my
で
hand,
一発目で脱臼
but
したのか、
a
その
few
後打っ
seconds
て脱
after
臼し
that,
た
I
のか
don't
わか
really
んないん
care. I
で
don't
すけ
really
ど、
feel it. So I
一
don't
発目
think
痛
I
め
was
た瞬
fighting
間
with
わ
one
かったん
hand.
ですけど、そ
I
れ以
think I
降は
was
もう気
fighting
に
with,
せず、
everything
パ
I
ンチで
had.
も蹴ったり、パンチでもし
So
ちゃうタイプなの
I don't
で、
really take
そ
it.
こは試合
I
に
don't
影
really
響
think that I
そんな出て
fought
な
with
い
an
んじゃ
injured
ない
hand.
かなって思います。
So
はい。
that's just how I fight.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. The adrenaline's going, and it is what it is, right? You feel pain, just it is. Just take it and keep going, keep rolling. So yeah, I get that. And I mean, mentioning Ryzen, of course, if you can eventually make that dream come true of getting to be on a card, essentially, if it was to be with kickboxing, you'd be the first, presumably in the first kickboxing fight for females in Ryzen. But do you have any interest whatsoever in maybe trying MMA at some point, or is it we'll stick to the striking for now?
今はないですね、命名は。
Yeah, I'm not
結
thinking
構そ
about
ういう声
MMA
も
at
あ
the
るんです
moment
けど、そんな甘いもん
because
じゃ
I
ないと
know
思
that
ってる
MMA
の
is
で、
not
キッ
that
クで
easy of a sport,
頂点取って
and
世
I'm not
界的
taking it
なしになっ
lightly.
てから
So
は
if
それ
I
を考え
were
ることなのかな
to
って思う
challenge
ので、
MMA,
自分がそ
I
れま
have
で
to
にキ
be
ッ
the
クの実
best
力と
at
知
what I
名度を上
do,
げて、キッ
and
クでも使いたいと思ってもらえるように
I
する
need
ってい
to
うのが
prove
今
that
の
I am the best
はい、
at what I
私
do
の
for now, and then
頑張る
challenge
こ
to
とかなと
MMA.
思ってます。
So right now, I think my goal is to become a fighter known and a fighter to be desired, to be able to fight in my rules on the Ryzen ring. So that's my goal for now.
Yeah, I mean that's a great mindset to have. Of course you want to be your best at what you're already doing before maybe you try something new, accomplish all you can in, kickboxing first and what have you. But I mean, I'm curious what you think, having that perspective, of all right, I know how hard what I'm doing is. I know how hard, MMA is and everything. But when you see fighters like, let's say, like Rena Kabota, who's crossed over from shoot boxing and been, successful in MMA as well. What do you think when you see fighters who go from, their striking backgrounds like yourself or whoever, and they go to MMA. Is that inspire you at all to be like, man, I want to be like do that someday potentially if it presents itself?
単純にもう本当にすごいなって思いますね。
Serena
やっ
is
ぱ私
definitely
的には全
inspiring.
然
All
違
I
う
can just she
スポーツ
wows
だ
me
と
every
思ってる
time.
ので、
Especially
そ
after the fact that she only
れ
trained
で
like
半
6
年とか
months
1
to
年
to
と
a
かしっ
year
かり練習してる
before
中
making
で
the transition.
選手と戦うっていうのは本当
So
に
she's
すご
very
いことだ
inspiring
な
to
っ
me.
て思います。
But on the
あ
other
とまあ
hand,
レイナ
she's
選手
already
は
accomplished
このキ
everything
ッ
in
クボ
what
ク
she
シング
does.
で敵なしになったの
She's fought
で、
everybody. She doesn't have
も
any more
うあと
opponents.
行
She doesn't
く
have
のも
anything.
正しかっ
She
た
doesn't
の
have
か
any
なって思
leftover
います
business.
ね。
So I think it was the right
私は
timing
まだ
for
まだ
her
戦いたい選手
to
がい
make
るの
that
で、
transition.
ちょっと
But for me,
全員
there's
ぶっ
so
倒し
many,
て
there's
か
still
ら
so many
考える
opponents
こと
that
だ
I
と
want to
思って
fight.
ますね。
There's so
ま
many,
だ
beefs that I need
やっ
to
ぱ私
squash.
何
So I do
のス
think
ポーツやっ
that
ても必ずトップ1
I
番
have
しか
to
狙ってないので、
do everything I
本当
can
に1番、
in what
本
I
当に
do.
世界で
And the
1
thing
番
is
取っ
for
てか
me
ら
is whatever I
次
compete
行く
in
のって感
in
じで
any
すね。
sports,
はい。
whatever I compete in, I always go for number one. I want to be number one in the world, the best at what I do. So that's my mentality as of now. And yeah, I'm not thinking of going to MMA at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, the fighting that you do inside the ring, of course, it affects things outside, I would say as well, because, you become a pretty popular, fighter, I would say, and, just going to continue to grow your star power and everything as you continue to fight and, have success and everything. So I'm curious, is it important for you to like be a good role model for, the Japanese people or young girls who want to get into, fighting as well? Is that something you think about being a good role model, or is it just, it is what it is. If it happens, that's cool.
最初は自分がやりたいから
So at
っていう
first, I
の
was
で
just doing this
やっ
because
て
I like it.
る
I
だ
was
けだ
doing
っ
it
た
for
んですけ
myself.
ど、
But
自分が
as my
今女
professional
子格
career
闘
grows,
技ではな
I
いで
do
すけど、
hear
女子
so
キッ
many,
クでは日
so
本の
many
中で
voices.
一番
The
目立って
more
る
the
と思うの
reality
で、
I
その中で
I
いろ
run
んな
into
声をかけ
is
る
that
声とかを
women's
聞くようにな
kickboxing
って
is
から、
not known
本
whatsoever.
当に女子キックって
I do
知名度
think
低いんだ
that
なっ
I
てい
am
う
the
ことを
most
今実感してるので、 本当にみんな普通
I
の
wouldn't
人、
say
格闘技好き
famous,
な人でも
but
女子キック
the
の
most
選手だけ知らないっていうことがほと
the
んど
the
で、
fighter that
なんか
makes
そ
the
れがやっ
most
ぱ悔しい
noise,
ので、
attention in
う
women's
ん、なんで
kickboxing.
まだプロデビュー
But
し
the
て
fact
1
that
年経
I,
って
I'm
も2年経
only
ってない選手が
I'm
一
only
番
a
目立
year
って
and
る
a
のかなっ
half,
てい
maybe
うの
2
もちょっ
years
と
into my
私は不
professional
満なの
career,
で、
and a
もっと
fighter
ね、
with such a
私が
young
いろんな
career
ところからアプローチ
is
して
taking the
必
spotlight.
ず
I
目立
think
つよう
there's
に
an
なっ
issue
て、
right
そ
there.
したらもっと
So
女子
it's
格闘
very
技の
disappointing to
キック
see
も見てもらえるんじ
the
ゃないかと思うし、
unpopularity
もっ
and
と人口
how
も増えて、もっと
not
大きな舞台に
knowing
立ちやす
women's
くなるんじゃない
kickboxing
かなと思って
boxing
るの
is in
で、
Japan.
やっぱり一
It's
番
just
最初
very
に、
disappointing.
まあ、第一
So
でキッ
I
クで
think
作ってもらい
my
たいっていうの
goal
があります
is
ね。一番
to
そこが
you know
目立つのかなと
make
思ってる
more
の
more
で、
noise
はい。
and grab more attention on myself, which eventually will shed light to the entire women's kickboxing scene. So right now, my goal is to be that person to be desired, and I hope that my existence will force Ryzen to open up their women's kickboxing division, so that I can fight in their big ring and get more exposure for the women who are all competing in kickboxing.
Very well said. And, it's a very interesting thing, being Yeah, you bring up great points. How the sport is still somebody's still pretty new like yourself, pretty much carrying it a little bit. If it's fair to say. So I mean, yeah, that's a very good goal to have. I think it's something that would be very cool to see it unfold before our eyes. So I'm wishing you the best with that, of course. And I mean, all right, I got two things left for you, Rina. I'm curious. I've seen that you have a YouTube channel. Seems like something that's very fun that you get to do. So I'm just curious, what made you want to start it, your YouTube channel, and something fun to do on the side.
なんか格闘家みんなが
So in Japan,
作り出した
it's as if all professional fighters have their own YouTube channel, and it's become a thing now. And I've been watching many fighters' videos and posts, and as you watch them, it makes me feel that I want to do this, I want to do that, and that desire began to grow. But usually, I'm really busy, and I don't have time to do that. But with the whole pandemic and the quarantine, that opened up some time slots for me to actually put things together. So that gave me a good reason to start my YouTube channel. And once you start, it's fun. I really enjoy it. I do all the filming and editing by myself. And, at the end of the day, it turns into like an art. The whole video that you created turns into an art. So I feel like I'm being able to express myself in a different way than I usually can. So I have been enjoying this quite a bit.
I could not agree more. And the editing and putting everything together, it's definitely its own project in itself. I know exactly what that's like. So, do you have any favorite people, fighters, maybe specifically, that you like to watch on YouTube?
まあでもやっぱり朝倉兄弟のチャンネルはすごいなって思います。
I think that the Asakura brothers' channels, they're doing what they do it's quite amazing.
Good choices indeed. Good choices indeed. Very entertaining, those guys, for their own reasons. But all right, last thing I'll leave you with here, Rina. I know you've been on plenty of Japanese game shows and talk shows and things like that. So I'm curious, has there been one specific kind of crazy game show experience that you've been on, or something, that stands out for maybe wackiness in terms of guest appearances that you've had?
なんだろう。
I think all the shows that are presented, I attend, they're all fun. It's all fun, and I do have great experiences with all of them. But the thing that I enjoyed the most was dressing up as a maid costume. And that was very fun, and I did enjoy it because I feel like being a maid is something exact opposite of my regular self. And dressing up as a maid and just acting like one was definitely something that was very interesting. I did enjoy it, so I might become a cosplayer in the near future.
There we go. Yeah, I mean, the maid video, that was the one with Kana Watanabe, right? That was pretty funny seeing you guys like work out and the maid outfits and holding pads for each other. That was definitely an entertaining one. So good choice there. Very cool. Very cool. But yeah, that's all I got for you, Rina. Thank you so much, for taking the time to chat here. It was awesome. I was very excited to talk to you. I know it's a big arigato gozaimashita. Congratulations again on your win. And, I wish you a quick, speedy recovery on the hand. Hope no complications going forward, and can't wait to see what's next for you. Just thank you so much. Next up is rising featherweight prospect Kyohei Hagiwara. All right. Thank you for joining me, Kyohei. Great to see you, man. Congratulations on the very quick and impressive win in your last fight. That was absolutely filthy stuff, man. So, thanks so much for joining me here. And I got to know, you must have been dying to fight again this year, because 3 already, and you got 4 coming up, man. You're just itching to get back in there this year.
Yeah, this will be a 4th fight in Ryzen, but I've been used to fighting frequently during my, my underground fighting days. So it's just an everyday thing. It's pretty normal for me. And so fighting a lot outside where people are watching, it's become I am exposing my normal everyday life to the people. So it's nothing different for me.
You mentioned the underground fighting right there. And, for a lot of people who don't know, I mean, how early did you start underground fighting, actually? Like, when your actual fighting career began? Like, How early was it?
So I've been fighting underground since 17 years old. I've probably fought there for 5 or 6 years. I think I have over 20 fights with underground fighting.
All right. Yeah, that's plenty. And, starting as young as you can, right? So very cool there. And, as for that Rising 25 knockout, though, the 22 seconds, I mean, how does that stack up, with your best wins? Because a very good one, highlight reel finish, and quick, obviously. So where does that rank among your best wins, would you say?
Yeah, so that fight, that finish was definitely my my number one performance throughout my career.
Yeah, and I mean, just how good does it feel to, not only beat somebody that quickly and impressively, but, you also beat a very experienced opponent like Uchimura.
So fighting against a veteran, obviously on paper, he was a much better better fighter than me on paper. So being able to fight such a veteran of the sport in my backyard, in my hometown, in front of all my buddies, you can't beat that feeling.
Yeah, that sounds like the dream right there, man. So a great experience, for you, of course, and it was awesome to watch, like I said. And I mean, just as a fighter, though, do you actually ever imagine getting a knockout that quickly? Is that actually something you ever think about?
I think specifically for this fight, because of how my opponent's style is, I kind of had an idea of this fight being ending quickly. And right before the walkout, I had this image of how to fight him and how to finish him. So I think this fight in particular, I got everything down as I planned in my head.
Yeah, I mean, it went very well then. You can kind of see the future if that was the case. So it worked out, man. And, also that same night, it was just a big night for your division overall because, crowned a champion for the first time, Saito over Mikuru. Just curious, all your thoughts on that fight in the main event and, what you think of the new champion.
My first thought was it was a very fun fight. It was a very interesting fight. And I think that if I work on my ground game, which is my weak part, if I work on my ground hard enough, I'll be able to get to that level very soon.
Yeah, I mean, you already got great striking, so it's just got to take the whole game to the next level, right? And I mean, taking on Ren Hiromasa in your next fight, of course, on New Year's Eve, he's a striker, so you might not have to worry too much about the grappling in this one. But, just how much do you know about Hiromasa going into this matchup besides, of course, that he is a striker?
So the only thing I know about Hiromasa at this point is that he's a striker. I haven't really studied him. I haven't really seen any of his fights. So everything moving forward, I'm going to have to watch his fights and study him. But as of right now, I don't know anything about him except he's a striker.
Yeah, fair enough, man. Appreciate the honesty. That's all I can ask for. So, I mean, with that in mind, he's very young as well. I think he's 22. You're both very young, talented strikers. So it's safe to assume that this will be, a pretty wild fight and it might not need the judges. Is that fair to say? There's
definitely no need for the judges for this fight. Someone's going down, and I think it's going to be him. But this fight will definitely end by a KO.
It's going to be a good one, that's for sure. Expect the fireworks, I would say. And just it's on the New Year's Eve show. Big Rise in New Year's Eve show. First time getting to be a part of that, man. I mean, how exciting is that for you? So
simply, I'm very happy to be fighting on the New Year's Eve event. As a matter of fact, a year ago on New Year's Eve, I was watching the Horizin event on television, and I didn't even think about me fighting on this platform a year from now, a year later. So in that sense, I'm very excited and very honored. I'm kind of perplexed in a way. I can't believe it's actually happening. But I do also understand that only very limited amount of fighters can fight on that platform on New Year's Eve. So I'm going to, I understand that very well. So I'll make sure to perform in a way so that people know that I deserve to be in that ring.
Yeah, I mean, you have so far. So I think, you've earned it with these performances you're putting on, man. And I mean, do you feel kind of like most opponents are going to really try to just out-grapple you because of how good of a striker you are until you show that, you want to grapple a little bit too? Is it kind of that point with you where, you're such a good striker that people are always going to try and take you down.
そうですね。やっぱり。
So that's one of the things that I do expect if I continue to fight at this level. So I've been training at a very famous jiu-jitsu practitioner's place, and he's been teaching me a lot of good things, and I've been learning a lot of good things. So a little more time, give me more time, and I'll be able to have my ground defense and my submission skills and technique will be up there. So even at this point, I feel less concerned than I was 6 months ago in terms of the ground game.
Yeah, I mean, just getting better every day, making improvements as they come. And you mentioned the jiu-jitsu coach there who you're working with. Is that a secret or can you tell us who it is?
岩崎さんって方ですね。
So I'm not quite sure about the details, but his last name is Mr. Iwasaki. He's fought in Quintet and everything. So he's a well-respected practitioner.
All right, very nice, very nice. Sounds like a good guy to have in the corner, of course. All right, two last things here for you, Kyohei, as we get wrapping up. You got so many great tattoos, man. So I'm very curious, are they just kind of for the art, look like how they look, or you got some stories behind them? I would imagine there's so many, and they're all very detailed.
So the tattoo on my chest is something that I do have feelings for. I put this one in when my best friend passed away back in the day, so it's more of an homage for my best friend. So the one on my chest is something that I really want to have special feelings for.
Well, I'm sorry for the loss, man, but that's a great gesture, of course, and it looks very good. And I mean, was that the first one you got?
いや、違います。一番初めに入れたのが右手の
Yeah, I started off with my right arm, and I think I got my chest done last year, but I started everything from my right arm.
確か入れたと思いますね。一番初めは右腕から始めました。
I see. Very cool. Very cool, man. Well, I will leave you this one last thing here, Kyohei. I know that you like to do some snowboarding and baseball, at least from what I've seen on your Instagram and everything. So I'm curious, what are some of your favorite, things to do outside of fighting?
闘技以外。
So yeah, I like to do tattoos. I like to put in tattoos, and I also like to ride my bike, my motorcycle. And during the winter times, I like to go snowboarding. I like to pick activities during the 4 seasons. So yes, I do like to stay active.
季節ごとに違う遊びを、季節ごとの遊びを取り入れていってる感じですね。
Of course, man. And I mean, have you ever tried skiing before? I'm one of those people who snowboard or nothing else. I don't even want to try with the skis.
いいはないですね。一択です、スノーボードの。
I've never done skiing. It's snowboard or nothing.
Yep, there we go. Good man. Good man. So, I will leave you with that, Kyohei. Appreciate the time so much, man. See, you're traveling here, so appreciate, taking the time. And look forward to the big fight and everything. Congratulations on the last fight, an awesome victory, and look forward to seeing it on New Year's Eve. Thank you so much. Arigato gozaimashita.
はい、しててください。一番面白い試合です。ありがとうございます。
I'll put on the best fight of the night.
And last but not least, we have the former Rizin and Bellator bantamweight king, Kyoji Horiguchi. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining me, Kyoji. Awesome to get to see you, man. Welcome back, first of all. Just happy to have you here. And I got to know right away, were you still able to fish while you were recovering, or was that something you had to really just, struggle without for a little bit?
ちょっとわかりますけど。Yeah, I was fishing on a regular basis. It was only a short period of time where I couldn't walk. So once I was able to kind of walk around, I was out fishing.
Very nice. Of course, got to get out there and catch them when you can, right? So very cool to hear. And I mean, of course, I know you've probably been, talking about the injury a whole bunch because, it's the most recent thing that's happened and everything. But, I'm curious too, just because I've heard, mixed things about if it happened during the fight or if you had it going into the fight. So, I mean, just tell me, exactly, when the injury happened, first of all, and was it during the fight or just before, really?
The beginning of last year, I already had I was feeling some issues with my knee and my lower back, but I didn't really take it too seriously, and I was practicing with a bum knee and a bum back. And eventually, during practice, it gave up.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, it's kind of weird, right? Because when you're it doesn't feel too bad, right? And then it just kind of goes one day, right? So it's kind of hard to imagine. Could you ever have imagined a situation where like, all right, maybe I should fix this before something happens, or is that something you even think about? Because you're like, well, I'm still capable of fighting. You know, it's not stopping me completely, but yeah, is that ever something that goes through like a fighter's mind where they're like, all right, maybe I should go figure out exactly what's going on with me before it gets too bad?
まあそうですね。なんとかなるさっていうのもあった
So
んですけど、
overall,
ま
I
あ
had the
途中
mentality of
日本に帰った時と
I
か
could
は
probably
腰とか治そう
get
と
through
思っ
this.
て、
And that was my
で
overall
ま
mentality.
あ
But
医者とか
I
には
did
行きま
feel,
すけど、
it did feel weird. So when I would come to Japan, I would visit some doctors and get it checked out. But overall, I thought I could get over it.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you never want to take really any big breaks, and especially for something like ACL, that's one that just takes some time in general. And did that make it harder too, having to have a layoff, especially after, the loss that you suffered?
まあいい休みになるなって思いましたね。はい。
Yeah, I looked at it as a good time to rest.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, you were on a hot streak there for a minute, just going, going, going. So yeah, eventually, good to take a little break, whether injury or not. So for sure. And I mean, looking back at it all, do you feel like, for that Kai fight specifically, do you feel like maybe you didn't take him as seriously as you should have, just because, it wasn't a title fight? I don't know. How do you look at it in hindsight with, the layoff and how it played out, just everything looking back on it?
まあ、それよりもまあ、
It wasn't that I was taking him seriously, but it was more so of my conditioning wasn't 100%. I wasn't maintaining my body, which led me to not being able to prepare properly for this fight. So I think that's what did everything for me.
To look at it like in a positive mindset, right? I mean, do you feel like it kind of, having that loss maybe relieved some pressure of having, this long win streak that you had? The pressure builds up, I'm sure, where you're like, oh man, he's never going to lose now. So, I mean, having that snapped, does it feel like it relieves some pressure, or maybe does it add pressure now going into this rematch because people want to be like, oh, the loss was a fluke. All your fans are like, let's show him it was a fluke. So is it add did it take away pressure or maybe add some? Like how do you feel about it?
あんまりその自分はなんだろうな。
So in general, I don't really feel pressure heading into a fight at all. So
まあまあ
so that in that terms, I don't feel too much pressure. I just go in there and prepare myself for the opponent who I'm going to be fighting, and that's it. But as for the New Year's Eve fight, I know it's going to be a fun fight with a lot of action for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, returning for just in time for the New Year's Eve show and, being, the top billing and everything. Is that a good feeling to be like, all right, coming right back, get you really excited to be in that spot right away?
まあそうですね。まあ
Yeah, so fighting on New Year's Eve definitely feels something special. It's got that special feeling, and I've had my target set to be back on New Year's Eve. So I think everything is on schedule.
Yeah, great timing indeed. And you fought on New Year's Eve shows before and everything, and just huge deals. I think probably the most fun part of the MMA calendar, just because we always know it's coming and it's always big. So I mean, having been yourself in a UFC title fight, which I think is another thing you can compare to like the biggest moments in the sport that fighters can be a part of. UFC title fight, a big Rise in New Year's Eve show, just all the fans screaming and everything, the big atmosphere. Does one feel like bigger than the other, or how do you just compare the two of being in those moments?
まあそうですね。
For me,
そこまで違わないです。やってることは同じな
it
ので
really doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference because what you're doing is the same thing. You're doing the same thing inside a different platform on different dates. Obviously, depending on a fighter, each fighter feels differently, and they will probably take that experience differently. But for me, it's not too different. It's the same thing.
Stone Cold Kyoji then, right? Just doesn't get affected by by what's going on around him. Perfect. And of course, to go back to Kai and everything, he's fought, I believe it's 4 times, since you guys fought the first time. And I mean, plenty of great performances. He had the loss mixed in there, but what have you thought of kind of his progression in his performances since you guys last fought?
まあそうですね。まあ
Yes, I think his variations in striking has improved. He's able to mix in some takedowns within the whole within the exchange. So I think overall he's developing as overall he's developing.
Yeah, hard to deny. He's been looking good, and I just can't wait for the rematch coming up here. And I did mention that he did have the loss, so I'm curious. It was to Manel Cape, who became the champion and then went on to the UFC. Now you've been in the UFC, you fought Cape, you beat Cape. I'm just curious. How do you think that he will do in the UFC now, Manel Cape?
いや、まあ、レスリングとか、
I think he needs to work on his wrestling more to be able to leave some good results in the UFC. But I can't deny the fact that he's probably going to put out some exciting fights.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be very interesting to see. And he'll be dropping to flyweight too. He's normally been fighting at bantamweight. So do you think that's gives him better chances of doing good, or is it doesn't make a difference on the weight?
まあ、そうですね。やっぱり与え
I
ると思い
think
ますね。
Manel's he's a pretty big guy, and so I think the weight cut's gonna affect him pretty well. But that's my thought. I mean, it all depends on that weight cut because he's a big guy.
Yeah, of course, of course. I mean, last thing about UFC stuff, but I'm curious since recently everything Davison Figueiredo, the new champion, has come on. I'm sure you've seen a little bit of him. Just curious, your thoughts on him, and is he legit? Is he the next Demetrius? People are really high on this guy. Just what do you think of Figueiredo so far?
まあ、そうですね。
So he's had some fantastic performances, and he's been able to finish the fight in the early rounds. So he's got the capability to fight, which is to finish the fight, which is a really good thing. But I would be interested to see him fight in the later rounds, like the championship rounds. So that's something I would like to see.
Yeah, that's a great point. We haven't seen him go there yet. So I have to wait and see if somebody can take him there. That's the exciting part about everything. And his next fight should be very good too, coming up here, turning around quickly. But as for you, of course, more back to the Kyoji side of things and, the Kai Asakura rematch coming up. Do you think that, Kai, since he won against you and then has become champion now, his star power, I feel like, has improved. He's becoming, a really big superstar in his own right. Do you feel like this is a fight where, of course, you assume you're going to win? If you get the win, that we could see a trilogy down the line, or we're not going to think too far ahead? Is that possible, you think?
まあ、そうですね。自分が
So yeah, it's definitely a possibility. I mean, if I beat him in New Year's Eve, and if he wants to fight, if he wants another rematch, I mean, I think I should give it to him. So
Yeah, for sure. We'll see what happens, right? Let's worry about the next one first. But of course, I also wanted to talk about your wins over Darian Caldwell, Kyoji, where you became, you won the championship, the Rizin Championship, and then took his Bellator title. Both crazy moments, really cool achievements for you and everything. The first one, big comeback, it looked like you were kind of down on the scorecards and they caught him with the guillotine there at the very end, big comeback. And then the second one, obviously you won your second promotional title to hold two at the same time. I mean, which one would you say meant more to you, if you could pick one?
まあまあ、ライジンかなって感じですかね。
Yeah, I think the Rizin belt meant more for me.
Fair enough. It was a very good moment indeed. So I was just curious there because they were both good wins, of course. But Kyoji, it was interesting, man. Because you started really turning into like a serious knockout artist once you got to Rizin and everything. So was there like something specifically that you would say kind of changed when you went from the UFC to Rizin that made you take this step up to this next level and go on your crazy winning streak? Whether it was like returning to bantamweight or some training changes or just anything specific?
まあ、体重上げたこと
So I think there's two aspects to why I was able to finish fights. One is because I went up a weight class. That's definitely a factor. And the second factor is that I've changed my fighting style to finishing fights instead of winning fights. So I think that's the biggest factor for me for me to be able to finish fights.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, instead of fighting for the win, kind of fighting for the finish and going for the kill more. And you're good at both, obviously, so you can kind of take your pick there, and it's working out. And, just get close to wrapping up here, Kyoji. I remember hearing the story from Kayla Harrison, one of your training partners at ATT, when she was talking about the story where you would call her like the big strong girl, and she got mad at you. I'm just curious, what's it like training with Kayla? Because obviously, I'm sure you guys have a lot of fun and everything, but incredible judoka and, turning into a very good MMA fighter. Just what's it like, training with somebody like her and, of course, all the fun I'm sure you guys have.
まあ、そうですね。すごい面白くて。
So Kayla's a very funny person, and She talks a lot, and she almost talks too much. So when I describe us training, it's more like we joke around and mess around more than we train seriously. I mean, obviously we do train seriously when we have to, but it's mostly a lot of messing around.
Nice. I mean, hey, whatever works. Sounds like a good time. That ATT right there. Good fun. But all right, two things left for you, Kyoji, man. I was very curious about this because, I noticed that you used to have two nicknames, or the Supernova and Typhoon. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but if those were nicknames, curious about the story behind them because you're not using them anymore. So how did these come to be, these nicknames?
スーパーノヴァって何ですか？
What's a supernova?
It's when a sun explodes, I believe.
ああ。それと、全然わかんないですよ。そんなの自分で聞いたことないですよ。
I actually had no idea that I was called that.
Hey, the more you know. Internet nicknames, man, they're crazy. Multiple situations where fighters are just like, I have no idea where that came from. So yeah, see, I had to get to the bottom of this. So thank you. You gave me, that's a good answer because you didn't know.
Yeah, I didn't know.
That's hilarious. That's awesome. All right, Kyoji, last thing I will leave you with, man. Thanks again for the time and everything. But I asked Juri Ohara this because he's a big fisherman too. Don't know if you know Juri or fished with him very much at all, but I asked him what his biggest fish was that he caught. So I got to ask what yours is, man. I'm sure you've got some big ones.
なんすかね。
So I think the biggest catch is that when the ATT owner Dan Lambert, he took us out fishing to a different country. I don't remember where we went, but he took us out. Kayla was there too. We all went fishing, and at that time I caught a big swordfish. And I don't know the exact size, but it was definitely bigger than me. So that's my biggest.
自分よりでかいですよね。まあどんくらいですかね。Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. Team fishing trip there.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Very cool, man. Very cool. Well, all right. Well, that's all I got for you, Kyoji. This was awesome, man. Thanks so much, for taking the time. I know you're very popular, man, very busy. So big arigato gozaimashita. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Very excited for the big fight. Oh, it's going to be great. New Year's Eve. Happy to see you back and healthy and everything. So, good luck with the rest of training and everything. And, we'll see you at New Year's. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Dude, I remember, just to talk about Manoa, man. Probably for me, the gnarliest submission that I have ever seen was he pulled off. And tell me if you know where I'm going with this, but let's see if I can find who was against it. I don't remember.
He beat Sokuju?
No. What was his name? It was like some Russian prospect. What was his name? Here it is. That's not Russian, maybe, but Goran Jettingstad, when he did the lateral knee bar and dislocated his hip, that one makes me cringe so badly. Have you seen that?
I don't remember that at all.
Dude.
What?
Let me send it to you right now because it is.
He dislocated his opponent's hip?
Yeah.
Wait, does it look nasty?
Oh yeah, it's horrible.
I don't know if I'll watch it, dude.
like the guy obviously had no idea what was happening to him, right? And I mean, it's the only time I've seen that one, but yeah, it's it's mean of him to do that because it's bad. Here, I'm gonna send it to you.
I don't think I'm gonna watch it, dude. Cringe-worthy things are not fun to watch.
Well, it's right there if you want to. But yeah,
you said by Twitter or
no, email? I put it here in the Zoom.
Oh man, no.
No, not like on video. I put the link in there.
No, I know. And now I'm gonna have to watch it.
Was this in Dream? I think no.
No, this IGF. This is Hiromasa stuff. Ow, damn. Dude,
Yeah.
I did not need to see that. Poor dude. He even looked like he didn't even deserve to be in there.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think he had that many fights.
No, I looked him up on Tapology. He's 0-1.
That was his only fight. Makes it even worse. Oh my god. Oh, that's so bad. Like, yeah, that's just mean to do. Like, I've never seen that.
I mean, I don't think Minoa meant to do it. I think it just happened. But when
he went to actually do a knee bar, but it just hooked onto the ankle.
Maybe it was the leverage. It was too long.
Yeah.
His limbs were too long, and Minoa man was too short, so it dislocated before he went into full cranking mode.
Either way, that one's probably my least favorite.
My favorite is Aoki's Wizard. Have you seen that one?
Who? Maybe.
Back in Shuto.
Let's see.
He knew what he was gonna do. He knew exactly what was gonna happen, and he did it anyways.
This wasn't when he flipped off the guy, right? That was an armbar.
Oh, this was way before.
Okay.
It was some Russian dude. It was some Russian dude in Shuto.
We're gonna have to put these on the episode now. Our reactions to these.
Aoki Wizard.
A wizard too. It's like not even typically a submission.
He just yanked it. Yeah,
I'm scared a little bit.
I'm gonna show you this. I'm not gonna watch it because it makes me like.
That's fair. I didn't watch the other one. I just sent you. So right.
Here's the Aoki one.
All right, we will get my reaction here too. The Aoki Wizard.
It's just mean.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah, that was definitely.
You know what I mean? Like, who can do that?
Wow. That's kind of crazy.
That's a mean ass move, right?
Yeah. I need to see that again, actually. That was just
so disturbing.
I got it.
He had the arm.
Oh, you can hear it too. Jeez. That is wow. I have never seen anything like that.
Because nobody does it.
I mean, he set it up weird too, though. Like, yeah, that was.
He knew exactly where the arm was and where his body was, and he knew that enough force would pop it. Like,
yeah.
Oh my god. That was something totally different than like an Anderson leg kick or checking a leg kick. It's totally different, right?
Well, he doesn't even give him the chance for a tap in that situation.
Correct. He goes for the instant break. For the one where he flipped the opponent off, he gave the opponent a chance to tap, right?
Yeah. I think he did too.
Boom, break. So it's really disturbing.
Wow. Yeah, that was wild.
I can't believe you haven't seen that one yet.
I don't know how I haven't. Wow.
Now you know, right? That's something to talk about.
I know that. I just can't even imagine.
And that one's gonna bother you for a while, dude.
Yeah.
You went for seconds. God.
I know. Let's see. What are some other ones? No. I mean, well, okay, we've all seen this one, so we don't need to watch it again. But the Shogun and Mark Coleman first fight.
Yeah.
The takedown.
That was the leg, right?
That was his arm. He just went to natural, put his arm down on the takedown, and
ouch. Yeah.
It was bad.
Those are bad too.
Or, of course, the classic Sakuraba, Henzo Gracie.
Yeah.
So ridiculous. So, yeah, I wanted to point out, before we did fan questions, we did speak to Kanako Murata after her UFC debut, successful UFC debut, of course. You guys could see that on my channel where we are now, youtube.com/Drake Riggs. And it's going to look a little bit funny on video, but we did speak to Kanako, right?
You know what really caught me and I thought was interesting is that when you asked the whole experience about the UFC, coming from Ryzen and Victa, she didn't care at all. Like, what I got from her answers was that it was just another fight. She didn't care about the experience because me, as being a promoter and knowing all operations, like the UFC, they do an amazing job with their operations.
Yeah.
They spend so much money. They send out limousines to pick up fighters.
Yeah.
And everywhere fighters go, they're treated like superstars. And with everything, they're so anal about everything, especially with the COVID, right? You test 3 times. Everything is on point, super professionally organized. And, like, from my point of view, I would be like, holy shit, this is amazing. The UFC, of course, they know what they're doing. They're cream of the crop. But none of those options or opinions came to Kanako's mind.
Mm-hmm.
She was worried about, one, contracting the virus and not being able to fight. And 2, she had a translator in Vegas. That's all what came to mind.
Yeah.
Right? The limousines, the whole Performance Institute, they give you food, right?
Yeah.
They gave her like pre-packed meals for her weight cut. They do everything, and everything is handled professionally, tip top. And she had nothing to say about that.
Yeah, that is funny.
It just shows where her competitive mind is. Like, for her, it's a fight. She's there to fight, and that's what she wants to do. She could care less about operations, I guess.
Yeah. And I mean, she didn't even seem that happy with the performance either. I thought it was amazing.
Her mindset as a competitor is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Because I was expecting, well, the UFC is great. Everything, they came pick me up in a limousine. They had pre-cooked meals for me, delivered. Mm-hmm. Everything was good. None of that came.
Yep. Oh.
It's amazing. That mentality is strong.
Yeah.
She's a competitor. Sure.
I mean, Yuri was more positive talking about it. I mean, he didn't mention that stuff, but he pointed out, I know you saw it, but pointed out more of the spectacle, I guess, of Ryzen in comparison. So
yeah, I mean,
that's something I thought she would have mentioned,
I like the quote from Erie, less show, more competition. I go straight to the cage.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally his mentality.
Yeah.
It's like, it was good. It was good to experience the show, but me, from my level of competition, is now just straight fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, damn, that's totally his mindset.
Yeah, I mean, it's not gonna get that much bigger of a feel, for at least I wouldn't think so for him in the UFC, especially right now. So, yeah, awesome. Some making waves. We'll see how Cape does coming up here, how he handles it. All right, time again for fan questions, everybody. Thank you to the 2. We just got 2 this time around, so that's all good, but appreciate them as always, you guys. So let's kick it off here. Zane Bando, at Zane Bando 99. My colleague at Fansided, thank you, sir, for putting one in here. And it is quite a loaded one, I would say. Very many possibilities to it. So Zane asks, what is the biggest fight Ryzen can make in 2021? And that, many possibilities for that, and especially some unknowns with how long the crazy quarantine stuff will all last. But I had to think about this one a little bit and try to be realistic with it. And my mind just kept going to, and I brought it up to Horiguchi, but that possible trilogy fight between him and Kai, I mean, that's the first thing that comes to mind without bringing in somebody from, let's say, Bellator to make another, massive champion versus champion fight. It sounds like, from what I've heard, that Patricio Pitbull is interested in, following his brother's footsteps a little bit to, get in the Ryzen ring at some point. I mean, that would be massive no matter who he fights. But as for straight up what Ryzen can work with right now, biggest fight, I mean, this rematch already feels huge to me. And I mean, it was coming off of arguably the greatest upset ever, in my opinion. If you look at where Kai was at in his career right there, that upset was absolutely nuts. Nobody saw that coming. And then if Horiguchi gets the win back here, reclaims his title, setting up the trilogy fight down the line, I mean, I think that would just make it that much bigger potentially. So that seems like the obvious answer. But of course, we need to see if Kai wins again, then that's probably out of the question, right? So I don't know. That's where my mind goes. You probably got a better thought process here for this one, but what would you say, Shingo? Obviously, many moving parts.
Yeah, definitely. Many moving parts, many possibilities. I would say if the whole pandemic thing continues and we cannot resolve the international travel things, like even for this New Year's Eve, we've kind of figured out a way how we can bring in a limited amount of international fighters to fight in Japan. But obviously, it's going to require a lot more time. It's going to take up a lot more of their time. They're going to have to be committing to coming to Japan for a lot longer. So a lot of things need to be agreed on, but it's still possible to a limited amount of fighters. But obviously, we can't bring in 10 or 20 like we used to.
Yeah.
Because the expense is just gonna kick our ass. But so in those terms, yes, there are possibilities. But let's just stay focused with domestic fighters, right? The trilogy is definitely one fight that could make sense. But I think I'm leaning, not I, but we're leaning more towards of just like a Grand Prix within Japanese fighters. Like we have enough talent in the bantamweight division. We have enough talent in the featherweight division now. Maybe the lightweight division, but I think even a super atomweight division. I think we can do something that makes sense, and we have enough talent. We've built enough stories in each division now, so that we can probably hold a domestic Grand Prix and keep the story going within the country, within the fighters who we have. There's still a lot of other domestic fighters that haven't fought in Rizin yet. So there could be new additions, new stories to be added. So, in terms of just not thinking about just a single fight, but I think a division Grand Prix would be interesting, and that would be something that makes most sense.
Yeah, no, those would always be awesome no matter what the outcomes. So I think that is a great point there. And I mean, I guess if we want to get real wild too, let's imagine the storyline of, let's say, I guess we would have to assume that Kai loses twice to Horiguchi or whatever, but then imagine he goes up to try and avenge Mikuru and take on Saito or something crazy.
Yeah.
You never know, you guys. So, yeah, very good question from Zane. A lot of good possibilities. They're excited to see what 2021 has for us. Hopefully less COVID. That's the main thing that I'm concerned about. But yeah, many options, of course. All right, moving on to the second and final one this episode, you guys, from @KingCO Jr., a past asker. So thank you, sir, for submitting another question. He asks, New Year's Eve announced matchup. Hideo Takoro has a history of the cross-sport rookie fights with Ursun Yamamoto, Kazaiman Saiga, Kazuhisa Watanabe, and now Shinobu Ota. Ota is a blue-chip Olympic silver medalist crossover. Do you think these matchups derail careers with too much too soon? So I think, they can a little bit, but this is Ota's debut. So I don't know if I would say it's definitely too much too soon to see if he would be derailed from just one fight in his debut and everything. But at the same time, you got to start somewhere. If this guy's as good as he is, we'll find out right away, right? So there's definitely two sides to look at that, and it just really kind of depends on the outcome of what happens, because we haven't even seen Ota yet. Like these other guys you're talking about, we've seen a little bit more from them. So yeah, I think that there's arguments for both sides there. To not give an exact answer, I'm sorry, King CO, but that's just how I feel about it.
Yeah, there's two ways to look at it, right? When you have these Olympic wrestlers, like these elite level athletes, like there's two ways to start. Like one, you put them against a Joe Schmo, right? Absolute tomato can and make them look great. That's one way to do it. But again, there's really no credibility to it, right? You can only hype up so much of your regular John Smith. And now, maybe back in the day that would have worked because the information was limited. There's only so much out there. But now these days, like, you can bring in somebody from Madagascar and people have footage on him, right? People have information on him. They'll probably know his freaking address by the time he fights. You know? So it's just really hard to do that type of matchmaking these days, I would say. So, you know, why not put him against a veteran of the sport? You know, it's the good thing about Tokoro-san is that he always puts on a good fight. When you look at the Ersin fight, when you look at the Kazuhisa Watanabe fight, you know, they all turned out to be good fights. And Tokoro, actually, they were all comebacks, right? Against Ersin, he got knocked down. He was getting beat in his hands. And then he, you know, came back with that slick arm bar. Kazuhisa Watanabe, he was getting peppered on his feet. So Tokoro-san is a veteran of the sport, but his fights are always so good. And he puts on fights where both fighters don't lose. Like, nobody loses when he fights. The result, yes, there's a win or lose, but overall, as branding and as an impression, as an impression for the athlete, nobody loses because Tokoro-san's fight style is that way. And he's got the credentials, he's got the experience enough to overcome those. I don't know how to say it, because he's not like physically a monster, right? He fights with snake and heart. Mm-hmm. So, you know, this fight has the potential of being a really good fight as well. You know, the good thing about Tokoro-san is that he puts on a great fight against anybody.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and you know, and even for that athlete, if he loses to Tokoro-san, I mean, that's okay. You know, Tokoro-san's a veteran of the sport, and he's a master at MMA. So it's something that both fighters can draw attention. It's not just one side. Both fighters can draw attention, and it has a potential of being a really good fight. And I think, you know, this matchup, I don't think nobody loses in this fight, either way.
Yeah, no, I think you said that very well. And when you think about the actual, let's say, derailing of hype trains or people who are coming in from another sport, whatever it is, you know, you mentioned the tomato can route where you give them some guys that they totally obviously should beat for, like, let's say their first 3-4 fights, however many, then you throw them to like a Tokoro or whoever and just totally expose them. And it looks way worse than if you did that right away, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, it's just different ways to look at it. But yeah, I think that's the best way. And, you know, you can't go wrong with a guy who's always putting on good shows and will bring it out of Ota, I'm sure. So
yeah, I think when you look at Kazuyuki Miyata's career, mm-hmm. I think for his first 4 or 5 professional MMA fights, he went like 1-4. Like, his debut was against Kid Yamamoto. Mm-hmm. He lost 2 seconds, right? But
the worst way you can lose.
So Miyata-san always talks about it, that it worked out good for his career, that he was already exposed, or not exposed, but he was experienced. He was brought into like the top talent in his earlier days. Although it didn't, you know, it caused him a lot of losses early in his career, but he fed off of that, and he came back a lot stronger, and now he's one of the best featherweights that Japan's ever had.
I mean, it creates kind of that need to maybe like adapt and evolve a little bit quicker than maybe they would have without doing that. And I mean, my mind went right to Miyu also when you think about that. Miyu Yamamoto, who, you know, came over with her fantastic wrestling background and had a really rough start to her career, but now she's clearly a top 5 atomweight despite being 46 years old. So, I mean, yeah, I think that those are 2 great examples there. And I mean,
yeah, and I think these athletes, they don't have too much time to compete too. When they they make the transition, they're already past their elite athletic prime. Yeah. You know, they're pretty much living off of their deposit of their experience of what they've had as an athlete. So you can't really wait 4 or 5 years for them to get experience. They need to adapt, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's like the thing with Rousey too. I mean, we all knew there was kind of the hourglass was ticking from the start because, you know, she had her knee issues and just from doing judo her whole life. Like, yeah, people forget that they've already had full careers, right? They're just coming to try something new and see if it works out. So yeah, it's definitely like you can't really wait. And, you know, especially with, you know, somebody like me who's not very young, but still young in MMA and everything. But yeah, there's just many different variables to it. So
Definitely.
we will see. And yeah, that is on Rizin 26, you guys, a New Year's Eve. And yeah, thank you so much to King CEO 24 for the question. Zane, you know, thanks, buddy, for shooting in a question this time. Good stuff from both of you guys. And, you know, always good stuff from everybody. Appreciate the questions, appreciate the viewing, support, all that stuff. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Another good one, I would say, very biased, of course, but yes, we were planning for episode 6 to drop before Rizin 26, of course, with plenty of fighters fighting on the card. And yeah, just hope you enjoyed this one. Appreciate the support so much, you guys. It means the world. Hope you enjoy every single episode, and the Japanese version as well will continue. If you were curious and you've made it this far to the end but didn't know there was a Japanese version, there is one, so go check that out too. And just thank you guys so much, and we will see you next time.